guys? Welcome to the Horror Movie Podcast. My name is Jack. Thanks for downloading this episode. This week, we have the Thom Loverro. Thom, welcome to the Horror Movie Podcast.
Thank you. I am the Thom Loverro. I don't know if that's good or bad.
You are. No, that's you're the man, the myth, the legend, Thom. Hey, okay, so let me get all these things right, okay? You're the lead sports columnist for the Washington Times, right?
Yep, that's right.
Check.
I've been there 25 years.
25 years. You've authored 11 books, correct?
Yes, I have.
Okay.
And everything from the Redskins to Negro League Baseball.
I know, exactly. And then, and like we talked about, an ECW book, which I thought was...
Yes, I did.
Yeah.
Extreme Championship Wrestling book. That was like writing a book about a motorcycle gang.
Anytime, and we are a family-friendly podcast, so when I say this, I'm only saying a wrestler's name. Anytime you have to put in writing someone named Balls Mahoney, you know you are... writing about something great. So Paul Heyman, what a character. So, and then you're a contributor now on ESPN 980. Is that correct? You've had a show on there, right?
I've just switched recently. Now I'm on 106.7 The Fan. It's the FM sports talk station in Washington, D.C.
That's awesome.
And I'm a contributor and doing a Saturday morning show on there as well.
Cool. What's the topic on that show?
All sports, generally all sports. Redskins, NBA, Washington Nationals.
Yeah.
Maybe a little bit Georgia Animal Steel this week.
Man, that's a big passing. And Ivan Koloff passed away as well. I don't know if you heard that or not. Yeah, that's
rough
crazy.
Week.
Well,
yeah.
and I sometimes end up talking about pro wrestling. I love pro wrestling. And I guess ideal for this episode, because it is Paradise Alley, that we would talk about. Hey, this movie is chock full of many great former wrestlers.
Yeah, in particular, one of the stars of it is Terry Funk Jr.
Absolutely. I mean, and he plays. I mean, he's one of the main characters. He's the main antagonist, basically, other than the really weird mob boss guy that I'm not understanding his. Anyway, but Ted DiBiase is in this briefly. Ray Stevens is in it. Dory Funk Jr., Dirty Dick Murdoch, and the list goes on of just it's crazy. So
yeah.
I'll tell you, here's what I'd like to do. Tell us about, now your podcast is Cigars and Curveballs, correct?
That's right.
Tell the audience about this podcast. I love it. It's a great podcast.
Well, thanks. I mean, what I do is I've built up over the years a pretty good Rolodex of people I've come in contact with. And I've built up a certain level of trust and credibility that they'll still talk to me even after I deal with them. So, we really concentrate on the conversations, and I call them conversations, not interviews, because I try to make them as relaxed as possible. Right. That we do every week. And we've done everyone from, my first one was Bobby Bonilla.
Wow.
Who used to play for the Mets.
Yeah, and the Pirates.
Who ironically has a bad reputation as a guy to deal with. But when I covered him when he was with the Orioles, he's the best guy I've ever covered.
That's awesome.
The best guy I ever dealt with. So he was a different guy than what people think. He was my first one. From there, I've gone on for Cal Ripken Jr.,
wow.
George Foreman, actor Joe Mantegna,
Sugar Ray Leonard,
manager Dusty Baker,
wow.
and recently Sugar Ray Leonard.
Yeah, man, that's just all. And I'm sure in your line of work, building relationships with people where they trust you, where you're not just going to. I mean, you know how journalism right now, the rap is it's so salacious. Am I out of turn to say that, right? Like the perception is that is it. I'm not even in that field. I guess maybe technically, I don't know if what this is considered, but all I'm saying is like that. You have to build relationships, and that's in any line of work, I guess. You have to build relationships with people because that's all that's gonna. I mean, that's what's gonna keep people coming back and build trust and everything else. So
yeah, that's the key. Is that people will trust you. And trust does not mean compromising your values.
Right.
I mean, you can be critical of people and still maintain a certain level of trust with them. So, trust does not mean sellout. It just means, be principled in what you do.
Yes, sir. Well, very good. Anything you have going on right now you want to kind of promote or talk about?
Well, what's interesting is, I watch. I'm kind of locked in a time warp. I mean, I live in the 70s and the 80s. I mean, when I watch TV at night, I mean, my networks are the Heroes and Icons Network, the Antenna TV Network, the Me TV Network. I mean, my nighttime viewing consists of Hill Street Blues, Rockford Files, NYPD Blue, and lately on the Heroes and Icons Network, they've been rerunning Wise Guy.
Oh, yeah.
Which was a great 80s, drama with Ken Wall and Jonathan Banks. Jonathan Banks, who went on to play Mike, the right-hand man of Gus in Breaking Bad, and now in Better Call Saul.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Right on. I love that character, by the way.
I'll announce it for the first time on your podcast. Jonathan Banks, who grew up in Washington, D.C., will be a guest on the March 1st podcast of Cigars and Curveballs.
That's awesome. Cool. That's so cool. Well, I'll make sure. That's
what I'm into.
I'm going to go ahead after this is over. I'll go ahead and tweet that out. Is that okay?
Just hold off. Just hold off on it for now.
Okay. Sorry, I didn't mean to.
I'm sharing that with you and your thousands of podcast listeners.
Millions and millions of people sitting around the old transistor radio. So that's awesome. Okay, I won't spoil the surprise. I promise. I pinky promise. So by the time this comes out, that will probably have already dropped. Probably. We'll see. I have to see how that works. But anyway, that's awesome, man. That's so cool. Very cool.
Well, thanks.
So you're a big Redskins fan?
You know what? I'm not a sports fan. I grew up a sports fan, but when I got into the business of sports writing, I really kind of lost that. So I don't root for the Redskins. I don't root for the home teams, and it drives people here nuts.
Well, you got to be a homer, right? I mean, yeah.
Yeah, because they want you to be like the homer like them. But I grew up a rabid sports fan. I mean, I grew up in Brooklyn, New York, a big Jets fan, Knicks fan, Mets fan.
Yeah.
There was nothing more important to me than the New York Mets when I was growing up. But you kind of lose that in the business when you're dealing with it every day. So I always tell people, who do I root for? I root for me. Whatever works best for me.
My brother, I'm in Missouri, and I'm from Missouri, and my brother is a huge Mets fan and always has been. 86 Mets, but it was even before that. He's not a bandwagon jumper. Trust me, he was on through some rough times there. But anyway, so I grew
up. I saw the New York Mets play in the Polo Grounds in 1962. Oh. Yeah, I'm older than everybody.
It's awesome. What was that stadium? I mean, was it hard to watch baseball there because of? I mean, it's a multi-use park, so I mean.
It was a huge stadium. I mean, the center field was like 455 feet away. It was right across the river from Yankee Stadium. Okay. I don't remember a lot about it. I just remember going there with my dad, walking over a hill from the subway stop to get there, and just remembering how big it was.
It's massive.
But when you're 8 years old, all the stadiums are big.
Everything is huge. Yeah. So, you know what's not huge is the acting range sometimes of Sylvester Stallone. I don't know if you knew this or not, but he has a marketable. He's a marketable icon. Okay, and he knows what he does well, and he does this well. This week's movie is Paradise Alley. Once again, does Sylvester Stallone do anything he hasn't just written himself or sang all the songs in the soundtrack? Because he sings, I think, a couple songs in this soundtrack, especially the first one, the Too Close to Paradise song. That was my favorite, by the way. Directed by...
I got to tell you, and this will just tell you how warped I am. I love Stallone's rendition of the intro song.
Oh, it was beautiful.
I liked it. I mean, I went out and bought I went out and bought the soundtrack, and actually, the soundtrack, Tom Waits is in the movie.
Yeah,
Tom Waits has cut a couple of songs, and they're excellent songs.
Well, and Bill Conti, who does the music on this, who did the soundtrack, he put together a soundtrack for all the Rocky movies, and has done a ton of work. So that's not my singing of Too Close to Paradise was not an indictment on Bill Conti, but more on the indictment of Sylvester. Hey, Sylvester, he's that guy that I think I'm gonna cook the food. I'm gonna also bring it out to you. I will also be the person you pay the bill to. I'll go and put. I mean, that's just that must just be his nature, right? Or he's at.
Well, I mean, when your biggest ticket, where the ticket that got you your fame, was the story that you wrote and insisted on controlling, even though he didn't direct the first Rocky. I think it was John Avildsen did. I think if that works for you, you're going to try to stick to that. And while critically it may not have worked for him, at the box office it seems to have for the most part, although Paradise Alley was hardly a hit.
Well,
most people have never heard of it.
I feel like, though, for Terry Funk and those wrestlers that, like Terry Funk is a SAG, he's a card-carrying SAG member, and he gets that in. I've heard him talk on different interviews about how his insurance is through SAG, and so this is right up. I mean, he's in a movie and gets to, it's like this is where it's at. He's smart, so
yeah.
All right, man. Time for some deets. Paradise Alley, directed by Sylvester Stallone and produced by Edward Pressman. Written by guess who, Tom?
Sylvester Stallone.
Sylvester Stallone. Starring Sylvester Stallone, Kevin Conway, Ann Archer, who the female characters in this movie are very weak. Would you agree? Like,
yeah, they
kind
are.
of not even there. I mean, there are some women in this movie. Here you go.
Yes.
Welcome to the movie.
Ann Archer, has a little bit of Me Too her role, but not much.
And they play her out early on. You think she's going to be a main character, and then they don't even really include her much. So, Joe Spinelli, Armand Asante, Lee Carnelito, and go ahead, and Terry Funk.
I think this was Armand Asante's first kind of significant role. I think this was basically his introduction. And I mean, nobody, I don't care, even De Niro, nobody plays a mob boss.
This guy's perfect.
Better than Armand Asante.
He's really good, really solid.
I mean, he played. HBO did I think a John Gotti miniseries years ago.
Yes,
he played Gotti. I mean, there's so many movies. He was a gang boss in American Gangster with Denzel Washington. He's just been a gang boss so many times because he's so good at it.
Perfect for the role. Like I said, Terry Funk, Frank McRae.
Another great character actor.
Yes, very much so.
Frank McRae's been in a lot of great stuff. He was in Used Cars. He was in, I forget what else. He's a great character actor. Yep. Really good.
Big Glory was his name in there. And his line, I'll tell you, I always take this to heart. I say this a lot when I'm having a bad day. He says, the last thing you see of him, he says, none of this will matter in 100 years.
That's right.
It's kind of, Tom, it's pretty true.
He says it on a garbage dump just as soon as he's about to jump into the river.
And then where did he go? He jumped in the river. Like, where are you going, man? Like Kramer in the East River, man. Like he's hopping in the river, swimming around. Joyce, go ahead.
Well, I mean, do you want me to tell you a little bit about what the movie's about?
Oh, let me get through this, and then we're going to go 30-second synopsis. And then Tom Waits, like you said, Bill Conti did the music. He's probably the talent of the whole group. Release date, September 22nd, 1978. And then box office was $7 million. Does not give a budget. I couldn't find a budget on this movie. All right, Tom, it is time for 30-second synopsis. You have 30 seconds, my friend, to tell us all about Paradise Alley. I almost said Paradise Lost.
Well, it was Paradise Lost in a way because it got lost at the box office. That's for sure.
You know it.
It's about three brothers, the Carboni brothers, who grew up in Hell's Kitchen, Hell's Chicken.
Which would be a
Hell's
great
Kitchen
restaurant in Hell's Kitchen. Hell's Chicken.
in New York in post-World War II, all trying to dig their way out of poverty through different ways. And they all managed to do it ultimately in the wrestling ring with a local wrestling promotion going up against the local gangster.
Yes.
And the local gang boss to do it.
Right. Vince McMahon.
Yes.
No, never mind. It wasn't Vince McMahon. Sorry.
Actually, Vince McMahon's father was and grandfather were both was both wrestling promoters. Jess McMahon was a big boxing promoter back in the early 1920s.
Did they promote in Madison Square Garden, or where was the?
Yeah. Jess McMahon was a big promoter of Madison Square Garden during the Roaring '20s. That's Vince's grandfather.
Yeah, and that's definitely in the blood to promote things and to. It's a family affair for them too, and it still is now. I mean, they've got, what now? Basically four generations now of promoters in that family. So, all right, man, let's do it real quick. Let's do 5-point plot. Plot point number 1, and I like to title these. Here's my title. Hey, yo, let's wrestle. So the opening song, like I said, Paradise. I keep saying Paradise Lost. Too Close to Paradise. Oh, that made the movie for me, really.
Really?
Sylvester Stallone crooning away at that thing, so good. And Frank Stallone is in the movie as well as like a lounge singer.
Yes, and has a little song. Did you? I mean, if you were listening to the song, would you think that Sylvester Stallone was singing it? Do you think?
I guess the issue becomes if you knew it was. He's on key, like he is on key.
Yes, he is.
It's just not a tone. It's like if I sing, I can probably stay close to key, but I have a crappy singing voice. But it's just Sylvester Stallone, so. It's great.
What happens is once you find out who it is, your expectations are so low.
Yes.
That when he's not absolutely unlistenable, you're willing to give him the benefit of doubt and say, "Hey, this ain't bad," because you expect such horrible. I mean, you expect it to be so bad.
It's in a movie anyway. So this is Stallone is Cosmo, and he's one of 3 Carboni brothers that live in Hell's Kitchen, and they're from there. This is where they're from. There's Cosmo, Victor, and what's the other one? Lenny. I almost said Beepo, or what's the other? What are the other?
Or Gummo. Or
Zippo. And so really they all have their own traits. Cosmo is kind of he's the jack of all trades of the group. At one point
he's a hustler.
Yeah, at one point he's the Macy's Santa. I mean, he does a little bit of everything. Victor, real straight-laced. He's not as smart and as swarmy as the other 2. He hauls ice for a living, but he's a large individual who's played by, and I forgot his name.
Lee Canalito.
Professional boxer as well.
Yes, who did not have a big boxing career, never did much besides this. And you're right, he makes a living carrying blocks of ice up the steps back in the days when people had ice boxes. And this was near and dear to me because this was my grandfather's business in Brooklyn, New York. And my father grew up doing the same thing, carrying chunks of ice upstairs for people for their ice box.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So you did you ever get to go out with them and watch them work and do that?
No, my grandfather had passed away before I was born.
That was that was probably before Take Your Kid to Work Day too. That probably wasn't a thing.
Yes, it was. Yeah, nobody was thinking.
Here's my son here.
About that.
Send him home or you're fired. Gosh, what are you? Anyway, so basically, there's a big arm wrestling match, right? This wrestling is kind of Bizarro Rocky. This is kind of a Bizarro World Rocky, but it's like the shoot fighting. It's pro wrestling, but it's obviously real. But it's pro wrestling, and they call it wrestling. It's a different.
Yeah, it is. Well, this is the days when where wrestling matches, they used to write about wrestling matches on the sports pages. I mean, they sort of, took it seriously. I mean, as a sport back then, even though it wasn't at the time. But you're right. In the movie, they don't present it as a scripted thing. I mean, basically, as far as the movies goes, these matches are real.
This is like early MMA, like Tank Abbott MMA, and
Tough Man.
Tough Man. There you
things.
go. Butterbean would do great in this.
Yes, he would.
He would do great in this. So the brothers, and we said that we have the brothers, and basically there's this arm wrestling match, and this convinces.
And Lee Canalito, who wins the wrestling match, the arm wrestling match,
yes,
when he's convinced by Lenny to do it, the other brother, and we'll get to him in a minute. It's for a monkey. It's for a pet monkey.
It is for a pet monkey.
Organ grinder's monkey.
So really, you have all the makings of a great movie, folks. You have all the makings of a great movie. You have Terry Funk, Sylvester Stallone, and a monkey as well.
And Terry Funk plays Frankie the Thumper. Yeah. Great name. And all he does is scream and yell throughout the movie.
It's a lot like what Terry Funk does. And he's a large man. Like when you put him next to normal humans, he's a really big dude.
Yes.
He played college football at West Texas, what was then West Texas State, and it's changed, or West Texas State at Canyon is where he played. Because he played college football with Stan Hansen and a bunch of those other guys that played down there as well. But okay, plot point number 2. Okay, so he beats Frankie the Thumper in this arm wrestling match, which then sets up an angry rivalry the rest of the way. So plot point number 2, over the top. So after the arm wrestling match, this is what convinces Cosmo that Victor needs to professional wrestle. This can get us all, the whole Carboni family, out of Hell's Kitchen. What's Victor want with his life? He wants one thing. And it's
a houseboat.
To live on a houseboat in New Jersey.
Yes, with his Asian girlfriend.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I mean, what a great life. That'd be ideal for Victor. Lenny is the other Carboni brother, and he is a war veteran. He's got a little bit of a limp. He doesn't like the idea. Initially, he does not like the idea of Victor wrestling. He doesn't want him to get hurt. And really, at this point, then, the wrestling starts, but we're kind of given this montage of wrestling matches where we have...
Yes, as he builds up his record.
Yes, it's like in Rocky where you see he fights Spider Rico, and he fights just some other randomo people. In this, you get Dick Murdoch and Dory Funk Jr. and Ted DiBiase, which, again, Ted DiBiase in this is pretty awesome. So, basically... There's a and then there's also this part. There's a love interest, and basically you just have Stallone doing his best Yo Adrian moves on her.
Yes, Lenny, the Armand DeSanti character, he makes a living embalming dead bodies. I think that's what he does.
You're right. Yeah.
And they lived in like a room near there where he would embalm the dead bodies. And I guess Lenny, at the way they set it up, the way Stallone sets it up, Lenny was like the toughest guy in the neighborhood before he went off to fight the war. This was a war injury. Mm-hmm. The guy who everyone thought was going to be a big success. And he comes back, bitter, broken up, and now he's just embalming stiffs. And he's considered a big failure. And he was supposed to be the guy in the neighborhood at one point.
And he doesn't want his brother Victor to fall into get hurt and fall into danger that way, I guess, either. So.
Yeah, and he doesn't want. He sees Cosmo for what he is, a con artist. Yep. He's his brother, but as far as Cosmo Stallone is concerned,
he's a huckster.
He's a con artist, at least at this point.
Until the big turn.
Yes.
Okay, so plot point number 3, the hardcore legend Terry Funk. So he plays Frankie the Thumper. What's his handler's name? What's that guy's name? Do you off the top of your head? What's his mob name? Is it Stitches? Is that Stitches?
Stitch Mahone.
That's him, right?
Stitch Mahone, who was the gangster manager of Frankie the Thumper. Okay. Again, played by a great character actor.
Yeah, who's been in a ton of stuff.
Kevin Conway.
Yes.
I mean, he was in Mystic River. He's been in a lot of different stuff. The movie is full of terrific actors.
Right.
I mean, Armand Assante went on to have a great career. Frank McRae, like I said, you go back and look at Frank McRae's. He was in 48 Hours, Frank McRae.
Wow.
All of a sudden, it just popped into my head.
That's the movie. Yeah.
And Kevin Conway was in a lot of stuff. So I think part of it was the story just may have been ludicrous, but the characters were fun to watch, I think.
Yeah, they're there. Yeah. So this part of the movie too, one of my favorite parts of the movie is when Stallone stumbles drunk. He's walking down the street. He's been drinking. He's dressed as Macy's Santa because on the back of his Santa outfit it says Macy's on the back of it, which is really funny. Runs into Old Glory, who's one of the wrestlers that Victor beat early in the movie. They steal. Is it a milk truck or a beer truck?
Or a beer truck.
I'd probably a beer truck.
I think it's a beer truck.
They drive it around. They tear the crud out of the whole neighborhood. I mean, they just destroyed the neighborhood, and they drive it through Stitch's front window. They're singing.
Yes, in Stitch's bar. Yeah.
Yeah, they're singing some Christmas song. Did you hear this? Before this happens, Frankie the Thumper and Stitches, and then the other two cronies, his dame, if you will, quote unquote, and then one other guy, one other toady character, and they're singing some stupid Christmas song thing, and here comes Cosmo through the front window of the bar, which I thought was really funny. So that just adds to the tension between the two people. Next up, plot point number 4, Family Feud. What I entitled this one, Family Feud. Big rift in the family at this point. Lenny takes over as promoter. The change of character here, it was a slow process. Cosmo has a change of heart, and then Lenny takes over as the Victor Whisperer to get him to fight.
Lenny undergoes sort of a process of rediscovering himself in being the tough guy, being the smart, tough guy, but he loses his heart in the process. He winds up, taking Cosmos' idea of using Victor, the wrestler, as a big money-making thing, and Lenny just takes it much farther in a ruthless sort of way that puts Victor at risk with all the wrestling that he's doing and the damage he's doing, but they're making a lot of money. And I think Lenny sort of gets caught up in the power of the moment, and it's sort of like they change roles. Lenny becomes the hustler, and Cosmo becomes the guy who cares more about his brother. But it didn't start out that way. In other words, the turn.
Yes, the big turn. The turn right there. And in fact, Lenny goes to Stitches and says, and he brokers this deal, and it's for $9,000, which in the 1940s,
yes,
$9,000 is a lot of money.
Yes.
But when you say
but
that...
actually, the scene that does it is when they're negotiating the deal, it's Victor who turns to Lenny and says, "How much money do we have?" And Lenny tells him, and then Victor says $9,000, and Lenny says, "That's all we got." He said, "If you lose, we'll be garbage again." Yeah. And the best line in the movie is when Victor turns to Lenny and says, "I was never garbage."
Great tagline. Even though Old Glory earlier in the movie did jump into garbage, as he said,
yes,
his special line
on his way to his demise.
Apparently, that was a really weird ending. Okay, so $9,000. The fight is on. Plot point number 5: wrestling in the rain.
Yes,
it's like an R. Kelly video. It's like a Seal video. It's in the rain. We're in the rain. It's coming down, and wrestling in the rain. It added effect.
The Paradise Alley was the name of the place where they did the wrestling. That was the hall where they had the events, and I'm assuming that the roof leaked. Is that? What do you think?
Did they really elaborate on it?
No, they never did. It's not like they had a skylight maybe or something.
Or
I just think the roof leaked.
Or it's like Jerry's World where they can open and close the roof, or Paradise Alley was really nice, apparently, if they were able to do that, but probably not in the 40s, have a retractable roof on their establishment. They fight. It's very brutal. 22 rounds, Tom. 22 rounds.
That's when men were men.
I've never, best of 3 falls, 1 fall. I mean, 22 rounds. Weird. Maybe I'm missing it. And maybe historically wrestling, maybe that's the thing. Maybe if we had Danny Hodge here, he would tell us that.
Danny Hodge, look at that. Look at that get by you.
He's
very impressive.
Maybe the greatest ever. Danny Hodge, possibly. Hey, Olympic athlete, Gold Gloves boxer. Danny Hodge, man. And pro wrestling icon. He's the man. Crushes apples with his bare hands and he's like 80 and he can still. There's a video on YouTube of him crushing an apple with his huge mitts. Yeah. Anyway,
I'll have to check that out.
Check out Danny Hodge.
Let's remember that Victor, the wrestler, his nickname is Kid Salami.
Oh, we did. Yeah.
As part of the bit, they have him wear meat around his neck, salamis around his neck when he comes into the ring.
Oh, maybe Vince McMahon did come up with this character because he would have some, the Red Rooster or some of his other characters that he came up with that were more cartoon than they were. Kid Salami.
Let me share a Vince McMahon thing with you for a second.
Please do.
I wrote a column about a week ago in the Washington Times off of the ESPN 30 for 30 documentary about the XFL.
Which was awesome.
Which is a great documentary. And I think sort of illustrates the point of my column was people underestimate the power of influence of Vince McMahon, not just in wrestling, but all of American culture. The impact that he has had on American culture is just remarkable.
Mm-hmm.
And people all the way to the White House now, the impact he's had.
Have you seen that picture? Have you seen that picture of the whole family?
Yeah, I have. It's remarkable. And I whatever you think of Vince McMahon, he had a sense of where this culture was going, and he tapped into it before anybody.
Right.
I mean, from reality TV to you watch the nightly news programs, the debates that go on CNN, Fox, MSNBC. They're all wrestling interviews.
The big promos, the wrestling promo.
They're all based on the conflict that you had in wrestling interviews. So I wrote this column off of the XFL documentary, pointing out that people have been underestimating Vince McMahon's power and influence for decades. And Stephanie McMahon, not only, I posted it on my social media account, my Twitter account, Stephanie McMahon not only retweets it, but then starts following me.
Yes.
I know. I knew you would love that.
Yes. That's so awesome. Tom.
And she follows like 400 people, and she follows me.
That's
it's like
crazy,
winning some kind of an award.
Look at you, man. That's great. And hey, Vince McMahon never sleeps. I've heard him say this in interviews before, that sleep is the greatest enemy we all have because it's a total waste of time. He literally sleeps like an hour a night. And it's like, he may be a vampire. There's a shot.
He may be supernatural. One of the things about the XFL documentary that really hit home for me was it's him and Dick Ebersol, who they started the XFL together. Dick Ebersol is arguably one of the most powerful guys in the history of television. Helped start Saturday Night Live, big on making the Olympics the power that it is now, has been a producer of 8 of the top 10 most watched TV shows in the history of television.
Wow.
And, started Sunday Night Football with the NFL. He said that Vince McMahon is his greatest partner he's ever had.
And they're
not Roger Goodell, not the Olympics, Vince McMahon.
And they're really friendly. I know it seemed on that 30 for 30 that they seemed super, super, super friendly.
Yes.
So.
I mean, that was stunning to me, and I hit home.
I think that's stinking awesome, man. Where was I? The wrestling. Okay, hold on. They finished the wrestling in the rain. Big freeze frame at the end. Whenever Victor wins the match at the end, big freeze frame, and it's like Rocky at the end.
Yes. Yeah. Really is. It really is like Rocky. All the brothers together celebrating their victory in the ring, and the little. I don't even know why you had to add it. was when I think it was Cosmo or Lenny's asked Victor what took him so long to win the match or something like that, and Victor says, "What was it? His birthday, right?
Yeah. Why did you take 22 rounds to win the match?"
Yes.
He says, "I was born on the 22nd."
That's it. That's it.
Really, Victor? Really? Really?
How stupid
That
is
was
that?
really dumb. So freeze frame, but hey, it was good enough to freeze frame it, and that was it, man. So, hey, let's do this real quick. What are some good? We're going to talk about goods and bads. What's some good parts of the movie? Goods.
Well, again, the Tom Waits songs are good. Tom Waits always plays like this offbeat character in movies.
Mm-hmm.
And I always like him when he's in a movie. I always love his music. So anytime Tom Waits is singing, it is good. I love the Frank McRae and the Cosmo night of debauchery on the streets of Hell's Kitchen.
They took out that street light like nobody's business with that truck.
Yeah. I mean, that's again, Frank McRae, great character actor. I love the interplay between him and Cosmo in particular. Watching Victor carrying up the block of ice, where he sort of makes he sort of comes to this come to Jesus moment that I'm never going to have a houseboat carrying blocks of ice. He carries a big chunk of ice up a big flight of stairs, gets up there, and the customer says, "Oh, I don't need it." Apparently maybe they've got a refrigerator at that point.
Right.
They aren't using an ice box.
Yeah, they've went to modern times.
In a fit of frustration, he lets the ice drop down the flight of stairs, and they have this great, video of the ice chunks breaking apart.
Explodes.
Yes.
It was epic. It was like an epic explosion.
Yeah. And that's when Victor decides, okay, I'm never getting my houseboat carrying ice. This is the wrestling it's going to be the only way it's going to happen for me.
Gosh. All right. So real quick, what have you been into lately? What's one thing, book, TV show, magazine, movie, anything, not anything at all?
Okay. Well, let's do a book. For one thing, I'm reading the book by, a legendary sports columnist named Jerry Eisenberg.
Mm-hmm.
Jerry Eisenberg is a sports columnist for the Newark Star-Ledger. He's one of only two sports writers to have actually covered every Super Bowl ever since it started. He's been to every one. There's two sports writers.
That's awesome.
And Jerry has a book out about the golden age of heavyweight boxing, like in the 60s and the 70s, from Muhammad Ali to Mike Tyson, where the heavyweight boxing was what drove boxing.
Right.
It's called Once There Were Giants. And I'm in the middle of reading that. And again, if you grew up when boxing meant a lot, and in particular heavyweight boxing, you read about Muhammad Ali, George Foreman, Joe Frazier, and Jerry actually is going to be a guest on my next podcast.
That's awesome.
To talk about it, where he tells a story about, among other things, about the time Mike Tyson cried on his shoulder when in the middle of an interview. So I'm into that book now, and I touched on this before with Jonathan Banks. I'm really into watching the reruns of Wise Guy on Heroes and Icons Network.
You're basically binge watching Wise Guy.
Yeah, I mean, I can't wait till it comes on. It's funny. The first Wise Guy was one of the first TV shows that used arcs, these story arcs, where you had like 8, 9, 10 episodes that would tell a story.
Right.
And the first one was about a mob boss and that was played by Ray Sharkey, and who wound up dying of AIDS like about 10 years later. Ray Sharkey was a talented actor. He was in a lot of good movies, a terrific actor. And then Kevin Spacey got his start on Wise Guy. His breakout role was he played an arms dealer and drug dealer called Mel Prophet. They just finished that arc right now on Wise Guy. And Wise Guy, I mean, Jerry Lewis comes up as a character. Glenn Fry plays a record producer. in it. So I'm really looking forward to watching Wise Guy. And Ken Wall, the main guy, Vinny Terranova, never really did anything else.
But that shows. Cool, huh? Wise Guy.
But he was good at it. Yeah.
That's
Wise
awesome.
Guy on Heroes and Icons. That's what I'm really into.
That's cool, man. That's awesome. Well, hey, Thom, hey, I really appreciate you coming on. You've been a great guest. I'm just going to tell you, I laughed a lot during this episode because, well, one, you're a pro, so you're good at what you do.
Thanks.
And
thanks. I enjoy listening to your guys' podcast. I'm glad I discovered it, and I recommend it to everybody I can.
I appreciate it, man. And you're the same. Yours, Cigars and Curveballs, is great. And like you said, if you like conversations with sports personalities, with I saw you had Tim Ryan on, you had sports writers on, or just general celebrities, man. Cigars and Curveballs with Thom is the way to go. How can people connect with you on social media?
Okay, well, I'm on Twitter at Thom Loverro, all one word, THOM, Loverro, LOVERRO. You can follow me on Facebook as well, and I'm on Instagram as well. Like I told you, I know just enough to be dangerous when it comes to social media.
Social media is so weird. Twitter, for one, is really weird. You put it out there. I mean, our president right now uses Twitter. I heard someone relate what Trump does on Twitter as and it's like a Harvard professor says, I think he's using it as like a scratch pad. Like you or I might write notes on something and be like, okay, here's some. That's what he uses Twitter for, is like, he just puts out, here's this thought we're having, and here we go. Which I kind of find, it's kind of interesting. Like, it's kind of interesting to think of it that way. I'm scared of putting anything online because I'll say something crazy.
Twitter is the crack cocaine of communication. And you should sell it, but not use it.
Yes.
So I tend to try to sell it.
Yeah.
I don't tend to try to use it. You don't use your product. That's what
the key. Any drug dealer would tell you.
Yes.
Any we've ever had on this podcast we've interviewed, they always say that. Best advice we've ever got. No, I don't know what I'm going down a rabbit hole now. Anyway, Thom, thanks so much for your time, man. You're always welcome back. If you want to come back, you think of another movie, we'll do whatever you want. You can any movie you want to do, man. So
all right, guys, I'll do that. Thanks a lot for having me.
Thanks, Thom. I appreciate it, and we'll see you.
Okay.
See you, buddy. Thanks.